Have you ever felt a chill run down your spine just by looking at an empty room? Well, today, we're diving into the top 10 classic haunted house movies that will haunt your dreams and make you double-check your doors at night. From eerie corridors to ghostly apparitions, these films aren't just scary, they're legendary. Stick around, because some of these tales are more terrifying than you might imagine. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you love a good scare. And join me as we explore houses where the spirits never rest. 1. The Amityville Horror, 1979. A family moves into a seemingly perfect home, only to discover it hides a terrifying secret that could destroy them. Can you imagine feeling safe in a place that's meant to be your sanctuary, only to have fear seep into every corner of your life? That's exactly the nightmare the Lutz family faced, and their story has haunted audiences for decades. From the moment you step into the creaking halls of the Amityville house, the tension is almost palpable. You might find yourself glancing over your shoulder as you watch, questioning every shadow and whisper. What makes this film so compelling isn't just the jump scares, it's the slow, creeping sense that the house itself is alive, watching, and manipulating those within. Have you ever wondered how it would feel to live in a home where the walls seem to breathe with malevolence? That's the brilliance of the Amityville Horror. It taps into a universal fear that the place meant to protect you can become your worst enemy. And the stories behind the production only add another layer of intrigue. Did you know that the real Lutz family left the house after just 28 days, claiming they couldn't endure the terrifying phenomena any longer? That's a fact that alone makes you question whether you could survive even a single night there. But it's not just about fear. There's a strange fascination in watching ordinary people confront the unimaginable. George and Kathy Lutz's experience forces us to consider: would you flee at the first sign of the supernatural? Or would you try to understand what's happening? The film masterfully blurs the line between reality and nightmare, letting you feel the characters' anxiety in a way that pure fiction rarely achieves. It's that connection, that sense of shared terror, which keeps audiences coming back, even decades after the movie first terrified theatergoers. And here's something to think about: how much of your fear comes from the story itself versus your imagination filling in the gaps? The Amityville Horror excels because it never spoon-feeds you every detail. Instead, it lets your mind conjure horrors far worse than anything on screen. While watching, you might find yourself whispering to the screen, "Don't go in there," or debating what you would do in the Lutz family's shoes. I'd love to know, if you were in that house, facing strange noises in the dead of night, would you stay, investigate, or run? Share your thoughts in the comments, because everyone's reaction is different, and that's part of the magic of this haunting tale. This is just the beginning of our journey through haunted houses. But if the Amityville Horror has taught us anything, it's that terror often hides behind the most familiar doors. So, as we move to our next film, keep asking yourself, could your own home harbor secrets that you've never imagined? 2. Poltergeist, 1982. A quiet suburban home becomes the epicenter of terrifying supernatural activity, threatening to rip a family apart. Imagine settling into a dream house, only to discover that unseen forces have taken up residence alongside you. Would you stay or flee? That unsettling question is exactly what Poltergeist presents, inviting viewers to step into a world where everyday comforts are twisted into sources of horror. As we leave behind the ominous halls of Amityville, this film takes us into a different kind of haunted home, one that's not ancient or isolated, but disturbingly ordinary, making the terror feel unnervingly close to home. What makes Poltergeist linger in your mind long after the credits roll is the way it transforms the mundane into the menacing. Televisions flicker with ghostly messages. Toys seem to move on their own, and children become inexplicably drawn to the supernatural. It's in these familiar settings, the living room, the backyard, the kitchen, that fear becomes almost unbearable. Can you recall a moment when a small noise in your home sent a shiver down your spine? This film amplifies that universal experience, forcing audiences to question every creak and shadow. The Freeling family's ordeal is frightening because it could happen to anyone, anywhere, turning the safety of a suburban neighborhood into a battleground of spirits. But beyond the scares, there's a profound tension in the parent-child dynamic that drives the story. Watching Carol Ann and her family grapple with forces they cannot understand makes you reflect on your own instincts and protective impulses. What would you do if your child were pulled into a world you can't see, where rules of reality no longer apply? The film asks this question over and over, not just through its plot, but through every chilling visual, every unnerving sound effect, and let's not forget the creative genius behind the special effects. Decades later, they still hold a power that can make your heart race and your stomach twist with dread. Here's a hook to ponder while you watch. How much of fear comes from the unknown? And how much from the realization that the horrors could be happening in a place you call home? Poltergeist plays on that tension masterfully, blending supernatural phenomena with human vulnerability. I want to know, if your home started behaving in ways that defy explanation, would you investigate, call for help, or just leave immediately? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because each person's instinct in the face of the paranormal is fascinatingly unique. As we move further into our haunted house countdown, Poltergeist reminds us that terror often resides not in distant, decaying mansions, but in the very rooms where we feel safest. Keep your eyes open. You might start noticing things around you that you'd previously ignored. 3. The Shining, 1980. A family becomes caretakers of an isolated hotel, only to find the past horrors of the place slowly consuming their sanity. Imagine being cut off from the world, surrounded by endless snow, and feeling every creak, shadow, and whisper closing in on you. Would you hold on to your mind? Or would the darkness claim you first? Following the suburban terror of Poltergeist, The Shining takes us into the icy, lonely corridors of the Overlook Hotel, where isolation itself becomes a villain, and every door hides a story waiting to trap the unwary. What makes The Shining eternally compelling is how it blurs the line between reality and madness. Jack Torrance's slow unraveling is not just frightening, it's hypnotic. Watching him descend into obsession, the audience is drawn into his mind, feeling the tension, fear, and creeping despair alongside him. You might find yourself asking, how much of the horror comes from the supernatural forces within the hotel? And how much comes from Jack's own fears and inner demons? The genius of the film lies in letting your imagination fill in the gaps, making every shadow and flicker on the walls feel like a threat. Then there's the chilling energy of the hotel itself. From the haunting ballroom to the blood-filled elevators, the Overlook is more than a setting, it's a character. Its presence looms over the Torrances, shaping events, twisting reality, and feeding on their vulnerabilities. How often have you felt that a place can almost watch you? Where the air itself feels heavy and oppressive, that sense of unseen eyes and hidden horrors is what keeps audiences gripping their seats. Heart-pounding, even decades after the movie's release. And let's talk about the children. Danny's psychic shine gives the film a layer of supernatural tension that never lets up. How would you react if your child could see the terrifying truths lurking beneath the surface? Truths that adults are too blind, or too stubborn, to notice. It's a question that keeps viewers hooked, questioning their own courage and perception in the face of incomprehensible phenomena. The Shining thrives on these questions, pulling you into the narrative until it's impossible to look away. Here's a hook to ponder. Have you ever been in a place so silent and isolated that your own thoughts started to feel threatening? The Shining captures that feeling perfectly, reminding us that sometimes, the most terrifying hauntings aren't just ghosts, they're the darkness within ourselves. I'd love to know, if you were trapped in the Overlook Hotel with your family for the winter, what would you do to keep your sanity? Share your thoughts in the comments, because each response reveals something fascinating about how we handle fear and isolation. As we leave the snowbound corridors of the Overlook, keep your eyes open, because the next haunted house on our list is waiting to show us that terror can wear many faces. And sometimes, it's hiding in plain sight. 4. The Haunting, 1963. A small group of people gathers at a mysterious mansion, only to confront the terrifying presence that lurks within its walls. Imagine stepping into a house that seems alive, where every hallway whispers secrets and the air itself feels thick with dread. Would you be brave enough to explore? Or would fear force you to retreat? Picking up from the snow-chilled corridors of The Shining, The Haunting introduces us to Hill House, a place where the past never truly dies and every shadow might be watching. What makes this film a timeless masterpiece is how it manipulates tension without relying on flashy effects. The fear here is psychological, creeping into your mind slowly, like a whisper in the dark that you can't quite place. You feel it in the slight quiver of a door handle, the flicker of a candle, the way the walls seem to breathe. Have you ever entered a room and instantly felt that something was off? That uneasy sensation is what the haunting amplifies, turning simple architecture into a maze of terror that toys with your imagination. The characters themselves are your guide into this unsettling world. Eleanor's fragile psyche draws you in, making you question not only what's happening around her, but also how perception and fear shape reality. Have you ever wondered whether our minds can create the very horrors we dread? This film challenges you to confront that question, blurring the line between genuine supernatural events and the projections of a frightened mind. It's a brilliant exploration of human vulnerability, and it makes you reflect on your own reactions in moments of fear. And let's not forget the mansion itself. It's a character as alive and malevolent as any ghost. The long corridors, the eerie silence, and the rooms that seem to shift and change all contribute to a suffocating atmosphere that holds viewers captive. How would you react if you were wandering such a house, where the environment itself seems intent on driving you mad? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Would you press on, uncovering its secrets, or would you run for your life? Comment below with your instincts. Because everyone experiences fear differently, and that's part of the magic of this story. Here's a hook to keep you watching. Every creak, every sudden chill in Hill House is designed to make you question not just the supernatural, but also your own courage. The haunting reminds us that terror doesn't need to shout, it whispers. It lingers, and it burrows into your mind, long after the screen goes dark. As we move to the next haunted house on our countdown, consider this. Sometimes the scariest places are those that challenge what you believe you know about reality. 5. House on Haunted Hill, 1959. A millionaire invites a group of strangers to spend a night in a supposedly haunted mansion, promising a fortune to anyone who survives, but at what cost? Imagine being lured into a house filled with hidden dangers, where every shadow might conceal a trap, and the promise of reward is overshadowed by creeping dread, following the mind-bending psychological terror of the haunting. This film throws us into a more audacious, almost theatrical kind of horror, where greed, fear, and the unknown collide in ways that keep you glued to the screen. What makes House on Haunted Hill endlessly fascinating is its audacious combination of suspense, mystery, and a touch of dark humor. Unlike Hill House, where fear whispers and infiltrates your mind slowly, this mansion is bold in its terror, demanding attention with every swinging chandelier, every slamming door, and every ghostly figure lurking in the corners. Have you ever felt your heart race when you knew danger was near, yet you couldn't look away? That's exactly the thrill this movie delivers, fear intertwined with fascination, daring you to stay as the tension ratchets higher and higher. The characters themselves are a delicious mix of archetypes and real human reactions: skeptics, opportunists, and those driven by curiosity or greed. Watching them navigate the mansion's traps forces you to ask yourself, what would you do in their place? Would you cling to reason, or would fear drive your instincts? The film cleverly makes you a participant, as if you're tiptoeing through the dark corridors alongside them, feeling every creak of the floorboards, every gust of icy wind, and every inexplicable shadow that crosses your path. And then there's the mansion itself, a character of contradictions. It's elegant yet malevolent, inviting yet deadly, a place where each room hides new surprises, both supernatural and psychological. How often do we think about how our environment can affect our emotions? In House on Haunted Hill, the house manipulates not just the characters but also the viewers, keeping you on edge as you try to anticipate what's coming next. What would you do if you were offered a fortune to spend the night in a house like this? Would the promise of reward outweigh your sense of fear and self-preservation? I'd love to hear your answer in the comments. Your instinct in the face of danger might surprise you. Here's a hook to keep you intrigued. In this mansion, nothing is what it seems, and the boundary between life and death feels disturbingly thin. House on Haunted Hill reminds us that sometimes horror doesn't lurk in the shadows alone. It waits for us to step inside willingly. As we continue our countdown, brace yourself, Because the next classic haunted house will push terror to a whole new level, blending reality with forces beyond comprehension. 6. The Exorcist, 1973. A young girl becomes possessed by a malevolent entity, forcing her family to confront unimaginable horrors and the limits of faith. Imagine discovering that the innocent child you love is no longer herself, but a vessel for something truly evil. How would you respond when the line between the natural and supernatural blurs so terrifyingly? Following the daring, risk-filled night of House on Haunted Hill, The Exorcist shifts the terror inward, from haunted houses and greedy explorers to the body and soul of someone you think you know, making fear far more intimate, raw, and impossible to ignore. What makes The Exorcist unforgettable is the sheer intensity of its horror, combining psychological dread with visceral shocks that pierce the mind as much as the eyes. From the first moments of subtle unease to the terrifying scenes of possession, the movie creates an atmosphere where every sound, shadow, and gesture seems laden with menace. Have you ever experienced a fear so profound that it stayed with you long after the moment passed? This film taps into that kind of dread, magnifying it through the story of Regan's struggle against the entity that has taken her. You feel her terror, her confusion, and even her parents' helplessness as if they were your own. The brilliance of the story lies not just in the supernatural elements, but in its exploration of human vulnerability. Father Kara's and Father Marin's exorcism is as much a battle of faith and will as it is a confrontation with evil. You're compelled to ask yourself, what would you do if faced with a force that defies understanding, where logic and reason are powerless? Would you flee, fight, or somehow summon the courage to act despite overwhelming fear? The movie challenges viewers to consider their own beliefs and limitations, creating a deeply personal connection to the horror unfolding on screen. And then there's the unforgettable tension created by the film's sound design and cinematography. Every creak of a floorboard, every flicker of light, every whispering shadow adds layers to the terror, keeping you on edge as you anticipate what might happen next. The way The Exorcist blends reality with the supernatural ensures that even mundane moments, like a child playing in her bedroom, become fraught with dread. How often do we take the safety of our homes and families for granted, until an unexpected force challenges that assumption? I'd love to hear your thoughts. If someone you loved were in danger from an unseen evil, how would you react? Comment below with your instincts, because each perspective reveals something unique about human courage and fear. Here's a hook to keep you watching. The Exorcist doesn't just scare, it lingers, creeping into your mind long after the movie ends, making you question what is real, what is possible, and what lies beyond comprehension. As we continue our countdown, prepare for the next haunted house classic, where the terror is woven into the very fabric of the home itself, waiting patiently for the unwary to enter. 7. Burnt Offerings, 1976. A family rents an old mansion for the summer, only to discover that the house has a dark, consuming power that slowly erodes their minds and spirits. Imagine moving into your dream home, expecting relaxation and peace, only to feel a strange pull that saps your energy and twists your perception. How long could you resist the house's sinister grip? Following the mind and soul-shattering events of The Exorcist, Burnt Offerings shifts the horror to a subtler, more insidious level, reminding us that terror doesn't always roar. Sometimes it seeps quietly, taking root in the mundane. What makes this film mesmerizing is its patient, creeping dread. The mansion seems alive, not with overt scares, but with a presence that watches, waits, and manipulates. You sense it in the way the walls echo footsteps that aren't there, the flicker of lights that shouldn't flicker, and the rooms that feel increasingly oppressive as the family spends more time inside. Have you ever stayed somewhere and felt inexplicably uneasy, like the space itself had a consciousness? That feeling is amplified here, becoming almost tangible. Every door opened, every step taken, draws the characters and the viewers deeper into the house's subtle, malevolent design. The family's psychological unraveling is as gripping as the mansion itself. Watching the parents and their adult son gradually surrender to the house's influence is like watching shadows stretch and distort in slow motion. You start to wonder how much of our fear comes from the environment versus our own minds. And Burnt Offerings plays brilliantly with this ambiguity. Would you notice the small, creeping changes, or would you 2. Succumb to the house's quiet manipulation? The film cleverly engages you in that question, forcing introspection as well as suspense. And yet, it's the interplay between the family and the house that keeps you riveted. Unlike overtly haunted spaces, the mansion here rewards patience. Tension accumulates with each scene, each day of their stay, until it reaches a suffocating crescendo. How would you respond if a place you trusted slowly eroded your sense of self? Would you confront it, flee, or unknowingly allow it to consume you? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Share in the comments what you think you would do if you found yourself in a situation like this. Here's a hook to keep your eyes glued to the screen. Burnt Offerings reminds us that not all hauntings shout. Some whisper, lure, and subtly entangle their victims, leaving us to wonder if the true horror is the place itself, or our inability to resist it. As we move to the next classic haunted house, prepare to enter a mansion where legend and terror intertwine in ways that challenge both mind and courage. 8. The Legend of Hell House, 1973. A team of paranormal investigators enters a notoriously haunted mansion to uncover the truth, only to confront a malevolent force far beyond their imagination. Imagine stepping into a house where every wall seems to pulse with past horrors. Every room hides a secret, and the air itself is heavy with menace. Would you press on to discover its secrets? Or would fear force you to retreat? Following the psychological tension and subtle dread of Burnt Offerings, The Legend of Hell House plunges us into a house where terror is not only seen but felt, seeping into your very bones. What sets this film apart is the way it combines intellect with terror. The investigators are scientists, logical and rational, yet the house challenges their very understanding of reality. You feel their growing frustration and fear as their instruments fail. Their perceptions deceive them, and the mansion seems to twist around their minds. Have you ever been in a situation where your senses betray you, leaving you questioning what's real? This film expertly plays on that universal unease, making the audience complicit in the investigation, as though we, too, are trapped in Hell House, trying to make sense of the unexplainable. The mansion itself is a masterpiece of cinematic menace. Its corridors twist unpredictably, rooms seem to change, and an almost tangible energy dominates every scene. It's a house that does not merely scare, it manipulates, provokes, and tempts, drawing the characters further into danger. Watching them navigate its horrors forces you to consider your own courage. What would you do if a place seemed alive, actively working to test your limits? Would you confront the force, flee, or try to bargain with the unimaginable? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Comment below on what you would do if you were in the investigator's shoes. Then there's the tension between science and the supernatural, which keeps you riveted, as each investigator faces manifestations that defy explanation. The movie asks questions about belief, skepticism, and the human desire to control what is uncontrollable. Do you think knowledge and logic can truly protect us from forces beyond comprehension? The Legend of Hell House doesn't answer, it lets fear fill the gaps, making every creak, shadow, and flicker of light a source of dread. Here's a hook to keep watching. The house in this story is more than walls and doors. It's a living nightmare that tests the mind, body, and soul. The Legend of Hell House reminds us that sometimes, the scariest places are those that challenge not just what we see, but what we believe is possible. As we move to the next haunted house classic, prepare for a story where loss, mystery, and lingering spirits entwine in a way that leaves every viewer questioning the safety of their own home. 9. The Changeling, 1980. A grieving composer moves into an old mansion, only to uncover a tragic secret that binds a restless spirit to the house. Imagine seeking solace in a quiet home, only to find it haunted by sorrow and malevolence. How would you confront a presence that is both mysterious and relentless? Following the tormented investigations of the Legend of Hell House, The Changeling shifts the terror to a deeply personal, emotionally charged haunting, where grief, mystery, and fear intertwine in ways that leave you both captivated and unsettled. What makes this film extraordinary is the way it blends emotional depth with chilling suspense. The house isn't merely haunted, it's a repository of memory and pain, each room echoing the life of the spirit trapped within. You feel the composer's isolation and determination as he pieces together the story, sensing the weight of the house's secrets pressing on him. Have you ever entered a place and felt the lingering presence of the past? As if the walls themselves remembered events long gone? The Changeling uses that sensation to craft an atmosphere of tension that is as much psychological as it is supernatural, drawing viewers into a puzzle where every clue matters. The spirit itself is hauntingly memorable, not a mindless specter, but a being with unfinished business and a story to tell. This creates a unique dynamic. The horror comes not only from fear but also from empathy, curiosity, and the desire to understand. Watching the composer confront this ghost makes you consider, what lengths would you go to uncover the truth? Even if it meant facing unimaginable terror? The film engages the audience in that reflection, making you wonder what you would do in the face of a haunting rooted in human tragedy rather than mere malice. And then there's the mansion itself, a character in its own right. Its creaking floors, shadowed corners, and mysterious locked rooms build a world where danger feels tangible and history tangible. How often do we think about the energy or stories embedded in the spaces we inhabit? Here, the house seems to breathe with the sorrow of past lives, compelling the viewer to piece together clues while feeling the suffocating tension of the unknown. I'd love to know, if you moved into a house with a lingering presence that seemed intent on communicating. Would you investigate, flee, or try to coexist? Share your thoughts in the comments, because fear can inspire countless responses. Here's a hook to keep your attention. The Changeling reminds us that some of the most chilling hauntings are rooted in loss and unresolved stories, creating a terror that is as emotionally gripping as it is frightening. As we move to the final classic haunted house on our list, prepare to enter a home where suspense, mystery, and the supernatural converge in a haunting tale that lingers long after the screen goes dark. 10. The Others, 2001. A mother and her two photosensitive children move into an old mansion, only to experience a series of chilling events that challenge reality itself. Imagine living in a home where sunlight is scarce, shadows seem to stretch unnaturally, and every creak of the floor could herald something inexplicable. Would you dare to confront the unknown? Or retreat into fear? Following the sorrowful and mysterious haunting of the Changeling, The Others brings us into a house where suspense is king, and the boundary between the living and the dead becomes disturbingly blurred. What makes this film so unforgettable is the way it crafts tension through atmosphere, isolation, and the constant threat of the unseen. The mansion is not just a setting, it's a living entity, responding to the fears and anxieties of its inhabitants. You feel the mother's mounting dread, the children's confusion, and the oppressive sense that something is always watching. Have you ever been in a quiet space and sensed a presence you couldn't explain? That subtle, creeping fear is the heartbeat of The Others, drawing viewers in with a slow burn suspense that makes every shadow, every whisper, feel loaded with menace. The genius of the film lies in its emotional core. Grace, the mother, is driven by love and duty, yet even her protective instincts are tested as the house challenges every assumption she holds about reality. Watching her navigate this fragile balance forces you to ask, what would you do if your home, your sanctuary, became a place of uncertainty and danger? How far would you go to protect those you love when the rules of reality no longer seem to apply? These questions keep the audience deeply engaged, as fear and empathy intertwine to make the haunting feel personal. The film's suspense is heightened by its clever use of timing, sound, and visual cues. Every flicker of a candle, every unexplained noise, every door that opens or closes carries weight. The house itself seems to breathe, to manipulate perception, keeping both characters and viewers on edge. How often do we underestimate the power of suggestion and the imagination? The Others demonstrates that terror can be as much about what is unseen as what is visible, leaving the mind to conjure horrors even darker than any film could explicitly show. Here's a hook to hold your attention. The true brilliance of The Others lies in its ability to surprise and subvert expectations, making you question not only the house, but the very reality the characters, and perhaps even you, take for granted. I want to know, if you were living in a house where the line between life and death felt blurred, how would you react? Would you search for answers, or simply try to survive each passing day? Comment below with your thoughts, because the choices we imagine in the face of fear reveal a lot about courage, curiosity, and human nature. as we close this countdown of haunted house classics. Remember, every house has its story, and sometimes the most terrifying ones are the ones that linger long after the lights go out. And there you have it, the top 10 classic haunted house movies that will make you rethink every creak and shadow in your own home. From the chilling corridors of The Shining to the suspenseful whispers of the others. These films prove that fear can be both thrilling and unforgettable. Which haunted house would you dare to enter? And which would send you running? Share your thoughts in the comments. Hit like if you enjoyed this countdown. And don't forget to subscribe for more spine-tingling stories that will keep you up at night.